Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into, well, a really fundamental question about warfare, about justice, and, what really constitutes lasting honor. And we're doing it through the lens of one of history's most, let's say, iconic pirate stories, the death of Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard.
That's right. And the specific moment we're zooming in on is November 22nd, 1718. Ocracoke Inlet. Teach is cornered, killed in this really vicious close-quarters battle. But the ethical core, the thing we really need to look at, is what happened immediately after.
The immediate aftermath, yeah.
Yeah.
His head was severed right there on the ship. And then later it was displayed on a pike back in Hampton, Virginia. Blackbeard's Point, they call it now, as a warning.
Exactly. That act is a very deliberate public desecration of a defeated enemy used for deterrence. That's the ethical knot we need to untangle today. And our guide for this is actually a staff ride packet. It's from the Catholic Men of the Chapel and the Catholic Military Apostolate.
Interesting source.
Yeah, and it forces us to ask, how should warriors, professional military members, balance that need for deterrence against the timeless moral duty to respect human dignity, even when the enemy is someone as feared as Blackbeard?
Okay, let's unpack this, and maybe we should start with the framework itself. The staff ride. It sounds kind of like a military history field trip, but it's more than that, right? What's the traditional idea?
Right, it's way more than a field trip. The traditional staff ride is a really crucial educational tool in the military. Its roots go way back, Frederick the Great walking battlefields in the 1700s.
Yeah.
But the modern version, the systematic approach, that was really locked in by Helmuth von Moltke the Elder in Prussia.
Moltke, okay.
Yeah. And he set up the 3 phases that are still used today.
Mm.
The preliminary study homework, basically, then the field study, walking the ground, and finally the integration phase, figuring out the lessons learned. It's fundamental to PME, professional military education, across the U.S. military.
Okay, so that usually focuses on tactics, terrain, logistics, how things went right or wrong in the battle plan. But this source material introduces something different, the Spiritual Fitness Staff Ride, or SFSR. How does adding spiritual fitness and ethics change the game?
Oh, it changes the fundamental question. It shifts from just, did we win, to, did we win the right way? Did we keep our moral compass while achieving the mission? So instead of just analyzing troop movements, the SFSR pushes participants to grapple with ethical warfare principles, just war doctrine specifically.
So you're looking at the moral terrain alongside the physical terrain.
Exactly. The whole point is to strengthen that warrior ethos by actively thinking through concepts like necessity, proportionality, distinction between combatants and non-combatants, and critically, humanity. These aren't just abstract ideas. They're actually embedded in U.S. joint doctrine, like in JP 3.0 for operations planning. The specific goal here, especially for Air Force personnel using this packet, is prepping them for those messy real-world situations where the easy way might not be the right way.
Okay, let's apply that ethical lens to Blackbeard's story then. What was the historical backdrop?
Well, the timing is key. It's right after the War of the Spanish Succession ended. Suddenly, the Atlantic is full of unemployed sailors, privateers with skills but no state-sanctioned job. This led to a massive piracy problem, and Britain launched its war on piracy around 1717. King George I even offered a pardon, trying to get pirates to come back into the fold.
But Teach wasn't interested.
Not at all. Edward Teach, born in Bristol, maybe around 1680. He'd learned his trade as a privateer. When the war ended, he basically decided to stay in the private warfare business. He refused the king's pardon in 1717. That act alone made him a declared enemy of the state, a direct threat to trade.
And he cultivated this terrifying image, his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge. That wasn't just a ship, it was a statement.
It was a floating fortress and a tool of psychological warfare. He took this French slave ship, La Concorde, and really upgunned it. Maybe 40 cannons, which was huge for a pirate ship, crewed by hundreds. And then there was the theater, right? Weaving burning fuses into his massive black beard and hair during battle. He wanted to scare crews into surrendering without a fight. Save ammunition, save lives on both sides, ironically.
And that strategy peaked with the Charleston blockade in May 1718. Just incredibly bold.
Absolutely. He sailed right up to Charleston, South Carolina, blockaded the port, captured ships, took prominent citizens hostage. And what did he demand? Not gold, but medical supplies. It was a power move that basically screamed, look how vulnerable you are.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The final showdown. Virginia's governor, Spotswood, he'd had enough.
Right. And he does something controversial. He bypasses the governor of North Carolina, Charles Eden, whose jurisdiction Ocracoke Inlet was actually in. Spotswood sends Royal Navy Lieutenant Robert Maynard down to hunt teach.
Okay, so right there, that's an ethical flag for the staff right, isn't it?
It is. First point of analysis. Spotswood's intent stopping the pirate menace seems legitimate, right? Jus ad bellum, the right cause. But the authority. By crossing into North Carolina's waters without permission, he prioritized urgency over legality, over proper channels. That's the first tension, necessary action versus lawful authority.
And the battle itself, November 22nd, 1718.
It was apparently short but incredibly brutal. Maynard used a classic tactic, feigned retreat, lured the pirates to board his ship, then revealed hidden sailors below deck. Close quarters melee. The accounts say Teach fought ferociously, took something like 5 musket balls, 20 sword cuts before he finally went down.
Just incredible resilience, but
Yeah.
then the head.
And that's the moment. The moral failure, according to the source analysis. Maynard's report is stark, almost cold. We cut off his head and hanged it upon our bowsprit. Victory achieved, yes, but the conduct after the fighting, that's where the ethical victory was lost. What's fascinating here is seeing how the staff ride packet breaks this down using the just war framework.
Right, let's walk through that ethical matrix. Jus ad bellum, legitimate authority. Spotswood's intent was arguably just defending commerce, but you're saying the cross-jurisdiction move painted the authority.
The source argues it questioned the authority. Spotswood might have felt it was necessary, but by sidestepping Governor Eden, he acted in a legally gray area. Zeal for a good outcome, perhaps, but potentially undermining the rule of law itself. So the ethical foundation was shaky from the start.
Okay. Then Jus's mellow conduct during the war, proportionality, right intention, the actual fighting seems like, well, a fight.
Exactly. The force used in the melee seems proportionate to the threat Teach and his crew posed. Military necessity. Maynard's sailors acted with discipline in the fight itself, but the post-battle act severing the head, displaying it that fails the test of right intention and proportionality. It wasn't militarily necessary anymore. It became excessive.
A spectacle.
A spectacle. It turned a legitimate act of war into an act of vengeance, or at least excessive demonstration. St. Augustine actually warned against this sort of thing, victories that become cruel, that erode the moral high ground. It cheapens the win.
Which leads directly to just post-bellum justice after the war. Treatment of the defeated, the dead. The display at Hampton, Virginia. It definitely sent a message. Deterrence.
It achieved deterrence, yes. It probably restored order by instilling fear. But at what cost? The source argues it denied basic human dignity, the concept of imago Dei, the image of God, inherent even in an enemy. Mutilating the body for public display, that crossed a line. It damaged the moral credibility of the victors, even if it served a political purpose.
And it's interesting how modern law reflects that same moral intuition.
Absolutely. Modern law of armed conflict, think Geneva Conventions, the DoD Law of War Manual is very clear on this. You must respect the remains of the dead, including enemies. Displaying bodies for intimidation or propaganda. Strictly prohibited. So, in a way, international law today codifies the very moral principle that Maynard arguably violated back then. Law catches up to conscience.
And that lack of restraint back then probably fueled some of the darker legends, right? Like the story of Blackbeard's skull being turned into a silver-plated drinking cup.
Precisely. That legend, whether it's true or not, and it's likely not, but it persists, captures that sense of unease, that feeling that the victory tipped over into desecration. It resonates because it taps into that moral failure.
So this isn't just a history lesson. The source connects this directly to modern maritime security challenges.
Right, because piracy didn't die with Blackbeard. The threat adapts. Today, you see it concentrated in areas like the Gulf of Guinea, off the Horn of Africa, the Strait of Malacca. The nature of the threat changes. More kidnappings for ransom in some areas, for example. Global piracy incidents reported are down from their peak around 2010, but hotspots remain incredibly dangerous, especially the Gulf of Guinea for crew kidnappings.
And the U.S. is heavily involved in counter-piracy efforts.
Very much so. It's a joint effort. The Navy's involved in maritime interdictions, operating under international law like UNCLOS, the Law of the Sea Convention. And you have critical support from the Air Force, too, especially ISR intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Think assets based out of Langley, supporting commands like AFRICOM and SOUTHCOM, keeping eyes on vast stretches of ocean. Agencies like JATF South coordinate interagency efforts.
So every time U.S. forces intercept pirates or smugglers today, they face a similar ethical moment to Maynard's.
Fundamentally, yes. The context is different, the rules of engagement are much clearer now, but the core challenge remains. Accomplish the mission, neutralize the threat, but do it while upholding the law and respecting human dignity. That's why modern procedures for detainee handling are so important. When U.S. forces capture suspected pirates or smugglers and have to transfer them to partner nations, there are strict protocols to ensure humane treatment.
That's a direct application of the Jews' postbellum principle that was missing at Hampton.
Exactly. It's about ensuring the discipline after the action matches the discipline during it. That's the mark of professionalism. There's also the ethical challenge around transparency, using imagery post-mission for accountability versus protecting the dignity of those involved. It's a constant balance. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the ultimate takeaway from the spiritual fitness staff ride isn't just about the battlefield. It's about leadership in all aspects of life.
Okay, how does it make that leap? From Blackbeard's head on a pike to everyday life.
Because the core virtue being tested is restraint, temperance, self-mastery. The same self-control needed to avoid desecrating an enemy's body is needed to avoid wounding someone with words in an email or in a tense meeting or even, over the dinner table at home. Words can be weapons too. A leader who loses control, who leads through anger or intimidation, loses moral authority just as surely as Maynard did, in a sense.
That really hits home. It's about balancing justice and mercy in daily interactions, too. Justice without mercy feels tyrannical, but mercy without justice leads to chaos.
That's the balance. Good leadership protects the innocent, holds people accountable, but does it with discipline and self-control, not rage. And when we fail, because we all do, the spiritual dimension comes in again. The need for moral repair, forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, patience, humility. These are the everyday equivalents of that post-conflict restraint. It's like the sacrament of reconciliation in the Catholic tradition, acknowledging harm and seeking to mend it.
The source material apparently includes a fictional story about a Captain Ellison.
Yeah, it's a powerful little vignette. Captain Maura Ellison refuses an order from higher up to release graphic photos of enemy casualties as proof of victory. They wanted propaganda. She insisted on protecting the dignity of the dead, even the enemy. Her reasoning was simple but profound. True strength isn't just about winning, it's about what you refuse to exploit after you've won.
Wow. The measure of a warrior is not what she proves, but what she refuses to exploit. True victory is the triumph of love over vengeance. That's a strong takeaway.
It really is, and this raises an important question for all of us. That line between justice and vengeance, it's often thin. It's tested in the heat of the moment, but truly drawn in the cool-down period afterwards. Law enforces restraint now, as we saw. But it's our conscience, our commitment to dignity, that has to really drive that restraint. Strength is proven by discipline, especially after the fight is over.
So, the final thought for you, our listener, building on this. Where in your own life, maybe at home, at work, in any leadership role you have, where are you being invited to show strength through restraint, to choose mercy over fear, dignity over display? Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.